The lights in the lecture chamber dimmed with a soft pulse, casting long shadows across rows of bio-sculpted seating. An uneasy silence fell over the students, a rare phenomenon in the interstellar halls of the Galactic Unity Academy. The chamber hovered in low orbit above a dead star, a fitting metaphor, Eli Mercer often thought, for how some of these students viewed Earth. Cold, burned out, irrelevant. Instructor Velox slithered into view, his crystalline scales shimmering beneath the podium spotlight. The alien's voice was gravel and glass. Today, we begin final preparations for your field immersion assignments. A ripple of anticipation passed through the class, twitching antennae, shifting talons, the click of exoskeletal joints. Eli remained still, arms folded, the only human in the cohort, and long used to being the object of curiosity or disdain. He'd spent most of the semester learning to stay invisible, his presence either mocked or dismissed. Velox continued, "Each of you will spend 3 cycles on a classmate's homeworld. The objective: first-hand sociocultural analysis, observation, adaptation, interaction." Murmurs broke out as species were listed and pairings announced. When Velox paused, there was a hitch in the air. Then the word came, deliberate and sharp. Earth. The room turned. Head swiveled, eyes glowed, feathers puffed, all of it aimed at him. "Mr. Mercer," Velox said with a nod, "your world is included." Silence, then a sneering chuckle from the upper tier. "Oh, stars, not that rock," drawled Coron, a muscular Braxton whose 4 arms folded across his barrel chest. His tusks gleamed, carved with clan markings. What could we possibly learn from mudscrapers and tree burners? Silas snorted telepathically, her voice tickling the minds of everyone nearby. Asterisk, human history is 90% war, 10% mistake. Shall we study how to throw rocks at each other? How charming. Asterisk, Eli's jaw tensed, but he didn't answer. He never did. Not here. Not in their arena. Jean-Tal, all jagged limbs and synthetic lenses, adjusted his ocular implants. "I'd rather splice code into a sand slug than waste cycles on a pre-quantum society." A few students laughed, though not all. Drevik, a silver-skinned Dvorthi, shifted in his seat, eyes darting toward Eli with a flicker of uncertainty. He had never joined in the teasing. Velox raised a clawed hand. "Mockery is unbecoming of scholars. Let the field speak for itself." "But sir," Coron protested, "the Council hardly recognizes Earth as a galactic contributor. Their species only achieved interstellar contact after catastrophic warfare. They've barely passed probationary entry." "Which makes them ideal for study," Velox snapped. "Progress does not follow a single path. Earth's trajectory is unique." Eli's stare remained fixed on the far wall, even as the instructor's gaze lingered on him for a breath too long. He knew what they all thought, that he was an anomaly, a relic, that humanity in its brutal evolution had come late to the stars and brought nothing but scars and defiance. The class dispersed slowly after the announcement, tension lingering like static. Eli stood, slinging his satchel over his shoulder. As he reached the corridor, Coron stepped in front of him, blocking the way. "Looking forward to meeting your warlords and nuclear wastelands," the Braxton growled. "Tell them to polish their spears." Eli glanced up at him, calm but unflinching. "You think what we are is a joke. You'll find out soon enough what built us." Silas leaned against the wall, her forked tongue flicking between her lips. Asterisk, "Oh, we're counting on it." Asterisk, she smiled with all the sweetness of venom. He walked past them without another word, but each step away pulsed with an emotion he had tried to bury for weeks, something sharper than anger. Not shame, not fear. Something else. Resolve. Back in his quarters, the sterile gray of the walls did nothing to quiet the noise in his mind. The view outside showed the endless curve of the dead star below, beautiful, lifeless. A failed giant. Eli stared into it, searching for meaning. They didn't understand Earth. None of them did. They looked at ruins and saw regression. They saw ancient conflicts and assumed barbarity. They saw a fractured people and missed the core, asterisk, asterisk, the refusal to break asterisk, asterisk. Eli opened his personal archive. Holograms flickered to life, images of Earth's rebirth, its strange blend of ancient tradition and future grit. Towering biocity skylines rising from jungles, children planting crops beside war memorials, soldiers training with drones under the aurora skies of what had once been Siberia. They had no idea what waited for them, and that would be their first mistake. 3 days later, the delegation ship docked with the Academy. Koran, Silas Jeantal, and others were suited for atmospheric descent. Velox accompanied them, along with a few data recorders and medibots. As the group boarded, Silas floated beside Eli, her psionic aura buzzing faintly. Asterisk, still time to warn your primitives, Mercer. We frighten easily. Asterisk, Eli smiled thinly. Good. Then maybe you'll listen. The ship's hull sealed, and the stars shifted as the descent began. Earth waited below, blue, green, and stubbornly alive. Eli sat near the viewport, watching the clouds swirl as continents rose into view. He thought of the ones who had laughed. He thought of the centuries of suffering encoded in every human genome. He thought of the warning his father gave him before he left Earth for the Academy. Asterisk, let them laugh. That's what predators do, right before they realize they're not the only ones with teeth. Asterisk, the engines thrummed as they breached the stratosphere, the ship trembling slightly from the pressure shift. Mountains came into focus, and beyond them, the outlines of a sprawling city, neither ancient nor futuristic, but something in between. Alive, breathing. Eli turned away from the viewport and looked at the faces around him. They didn't know it yet, but they would, and by the end of this field trip, they'd remember Earth, not for what it had been, but for what it had become. The ship's landing gear extended with a low thud as it touched down on a raised platform carved into the cliffs overlooking New Athens, one of Earth's restored megacities. The air shimmered with heat and life. Lush green terraces layered with solar glass farms spread beneath them like a giant's garden, pulsing with blue irrigation veins and wind towers that spun like metallic dandelions in the breeze. The city was unlike anything the alien students had expected. It wasn't ruined. It was radiant. Koran grunted as he stepped off the boarding ramp, his thick boots sinking into a sponge-like moss that cushioned the landing platform. Where's the rubble, he muttered. Gentle's mechanical lenses clicked and shifted focus. Topsoil reconstruction. Artificial photosynthesis units. They repurposed the old Earth's remains into this. Curious. Eli didn't respond. He walked ahead of the group, jaw tight, hands relaxed but ready. Behind him, the Academy students filed out under the eye of Instructor Velox and several aside envoys clad in mirrored enviro suits. The group was greeted by an Earth-based AI interface named Oberon, projected in the shape of a man with silver hair and midnight blue eyes. Welcome, delegates, Oberon intoned, his voice cultured and impossibly calm. You will find Earth has changed since the last council records were updated. Please follow me. The path led through a corridor of bioglass and living stone. Vines curled across engineered arches, flowers hummed faintly in the sunlight. The contrast to the students' expectations was so great, some of them glanced at one another in confusion, waiting for the illusion to drop, for the rot to show. Instead, the first stop was a plaza filled with memorial pillars, each one etched with names and years. Silas narrowed her eyes at the nearest one. These are dead, she asked aloud. Civilians, Oberon replied without hesitation. From the last energy wars. Each pillar represents 10,000. Silas tilted her head. Asterisk, and you display them so openly? Asterisk, yes, Oberon said. Hiding pain does not heal it. We remember, so we do not repeat. A chill swept through the group. Further on, they entered the Hall of Evolutionary Resilience. The walls came alive with holograms of ancient human milestones. Ice ages endured, pandemics survived, natural disasters navigated, wars fought and lost and fought again. But there were no heroes posed in glory. Only people, mud-slicked, frostbitten, bloodied, asterisk enduring, asterisk. Drevik lingered near one projection of children learning to read in a bombed-out school. They kept going. Eli nodded beside him. We didn't have another option. Jean-Tal scoffed. There's no honor in surviving just because you're too stubborn to die. No, Eli said softly. There's something worse in refusing to live because you're afraid to suffer. Quran growled low in his throat, but said nothing. They exited into a domed courtyard with a sweeping view of New Athens. Unlike the sterile metropoles of the core worlds, this city moved like a living organism. Sky rails curved between buildings shaped like waves. Trees were integrated into towers, their roots feeding into nutrient loops. Children ran beneath drone-shadowed skies, laughing. This doesn't make sense, Silas whispered. This world was in ashes less than a century ago. It still is, Eli said. We just stopped being afraid of the dark. Oberon turned to the group. You will now be taken to the Outer Defense Archives. The ride was silent. A sleek tram wound through the cliffs until it reached a gate flanked by kinetic turrets and EMP netting. As the gate hissed open, the air changed. The Defense Archives weren't designed to impress. They were made to remind. Inside, layered beneath the cliffs, were preserved remnants of Earth's greatest and most terrible weapons. A 3-story tall railgun, rusted but intact. Orbital drone pods from the cold satellite wars. Quantum destabilizer prototypes never used. And in the center, a ring of display holos showed clips from the global memory bank. The aliens stood frozen, watching old battle footage. Cities lit in plasma fire, ocean fleets torn apart by autonomous torpedoes, cloaked troops waging silent wars across shattered tundras. But then, the feed shifted to disaster relief, medics in exosuits, strangers building bridges over radioactive rivers, soldiers sacrificing themselves for civilians, children being airlifted out of collapse zones by drones painted with hand-drawn peace signs. Your planet was suicidal, Jean-Tal muttered. No, Eli corrected. We were desperate. There's a difference. Silas turned toward him, her mental voice quieter this time. Asterisk, and now? Asterisk, now we know what we are, and we know what we're capable of. The difference is, we choose not to be monsters anymore. Quran looked away. The instructor, who had been mostly silent, finally spoke. I underestimated this world. So did they, Eli said, eyes fixed on a wall-mounted list of planetary invaders, and the Earth dates marking their defeats. A sudden alert pulsed through the archive floor. Lights flashed red. Oberon's voice dropped to a lower frequency. Incoming. Unidentified vessels breaching atmospheric edge. Estimated origin outer midrim. Not responding to communication protocols. Velox barked. A simulation? No. Real. Panic stirred among the students. Gental's limbs twitched. Silas clutched her temples. Quran moved protectively in front of her. Eli didn't move. They're coming. Drevik asked. Eli turned slowly. Let's see what Earth has learned. Above them, the ceiling shimmered transparent. In the sky, thin black trails streaked downward, enemy recon drones entering low orbit. More were coming. Jean-Tal barked. Your world has no fleet. No orbital defense stations. What can you possibly do? Oberon answered instead. Earth's defenses are not designed to intimidate. They are designed to endure. Above the clouds, satellite formations began to shift. Lights rippled through the atmosphere as dormant systems activated. Deep within the mountain, tremors signaled the awakening of planetary defense algorithms once thought obsolete. The students backed toward the interior walls. Eli took one step forward. They thought we'd be afraid, he said, and then the world began to fight back. The sky cracked open like a wounded mirror. Shards of light scattered across the atmosphere as enemy craft pierced through the stratosphere, trailing kinetic exhaust and anti-scan static. They descended in tight formation, sleek, predatory ships with no insignias, no warning. Just intent. Within the Outer Defense Archives, sirens hummed low but firm. Earth's version of an alert was not chaos, but coordination. The alien students huddled together near the central holodeble, their bravado fading into wide-eyed silence. Eli stood apart, watching the orbital readouts with the stillness of someone who'd prepared his whole life for this. Why aren't your people panicking? Jean-Tal asked, his voice sharp with disbelief. "This is an invasion." "No," Eli replied, eyes never leaving the projections. "This is an opportunity." Outside, Earth's defenses responded without hesitation. Satellite swarms awakened, rearranging themselves like a school of fish anticipating a predator. The sky lit up with the ripple of electromagnetic pulses as stealth nets snapped open. Drones, silent, fast, and lethal, burst from canopies, rooftops, and underground vaults. They moved not in rigid formations, but like a synchronized living system. Oberon's voice echoed through the chamber, calm as ever. Engagement protocols active. Civilian centers secured. Population sheltering underground. Countermeasures deploying. Instructor Velox clenched his claws. "You prepared for this?" "We always prepare," Eli said. "History taught us what happens to worlds that don't." Silas's mental voice reached out to the others, no longer smug, now shaken. Asterisk, "I tried to sense them, the invaders, but I can't. They're shielded." Asterisk, "That's because they've been watching us," Eli said, his tone edged with steel. "Studying us. Planning for a day we wouldn't see coming. But they forgot something." Quran turned to him, expression uncertain. "Forgot what?" Eli looked at him now, really looked. "That the worst day for Earth is the day the rest of the galaxy decides to test us." Beyond the transparent ceiling, the first wave of enemy drones struck a defensive shield grid, just miles from the city. Instead of a blast, the air absorbed the hit. Microwave energy filaments, hidden within the clouds, flickered alive, dissipating plasma, redirecting force. The ships recoiled, confused. That hesitation cost them. Earth's response was surgical. High-altitude rail platforms emerged from dormant mountain ranges. Ionic lances arced through the sky, piercing the lead vessels mid-turn. 2 ships shattered into burning spirals before they could even fire a second volley. From the lower cliffs, humanoid forms in advanced exo-armor launched into the air, silent units, faceless and fast. They were civilians, engineers, even gardeners, because on Earth everyone trained, everyone defended, everyone remembered. "Your soldiers look ordinary," Drevik whispered. "They are," Eli said, "and that's what should terrify you." The second wave came with brute force. Drop pods rained down into the surrounding terrain. But Earth had no centralized military base to target, no command center to decapitate. Defense was woven into the skin of the planet itself. Gentle's eyes flicked rapidly as he observed Earth's countermeasures through his implants. "This is impossible." They predicted an uncoordinated defense, but your systems are decentralized, adaptive. "Like bacteria," Eli replied, "or neural tissue, or wildfire." The door to the archive opened with a hydraulic hiss. A woman stepped in, armored in matte black plates, visor down. She nodded once at Eli. "You're activated," she said. "Your unit's already deployed. We're assigning you as liaison to the visitors." Eli straightened. "Acknowledged." "Wait," Quran said. "Asterisk your asterisk military?" "I'm human," Eli said, adjusting the collar of his jacket and strapping on a utility belt. "That's the same thing." The woman handed him a data shard. "They're requesting a representative, someone native." "Tell them they already made contact," Eli said. As he turned to leave, Velox stepped forward. "Mr. Mercer, your world is under siege, and yet you act as though you've already won." "We have," Eli said, "not because we're stronger, but because we've already lived through worse. And we learned." He left them with that. On the surface, the invaders had deployed a vanguard force in the ruins of a former defense bastion. Eli approached alone, weaponless, through a narrow gorge. Eyes above tracked him. Drones, satellites, operatives hidden in foliage. None moved. Earth did not shoot first. Not unless it had to. He reached the drop zone. The enemy commander, an armored figure twice his height, stood waiting. Around them, dozens of enemy soldiers trained their weapons. Eli raised his hands, not in surrender but in control. "I'm your representative," he said. "State your purpose." "You're unarmed," the commander replied, his voice guttural, filtered through armor. "Not unprotected." The alien studied him, confused. Where is your chain of command? Your primary defense network? You're standing in it. More silence. We came to test your defenses. To measure your threat level, the commander said. We didn't expect this. That's why you're going to lose, Eli said. You thought Earth's strength was in its weapons. It's not. He gestured at the cliffs, the sky, the silence. It's in our memory, in our refusal to stay dead. You're not fighting a military. You're facing a planet that refused to go extinct. A tremor rippled through the ground. High above, stealth bombers coasted through the clouds like shadows, silent, invisible, watching. The commander hesitated. If we retreat, you'll be allowed to leave, Eli said, but Earth won't forget you, and we don't give second chances lightly. The wind shifted. Tension buzzed in the air. The invaders looked to their leader, waiting. At last, the commander nodded. This world, it isn't what we believed. No, Eli said. It never is. Until it's too late. Back in the archives, the students watched from secure feeds. Silas said nothing. Her mind was silent. Jeantal sat with trembling limbs. Drevik stared at the ceiling, blinking slowly. Karan slumped in his seat, fists clenched. We mocked you. Eli returned, armored now, face smudged with dust. You still can. No, Karan said, voice low. We were wrong. Eli met his gaze but said nothing. Outside, the alien fleet began to rise from the atmosphere, tails between their engines. And Earth, once mocked, stood untouched, scarred perhaps, but undefeated. The wind howled through the cliffside outpost as the last of the enemy ships vanished into the upper stratosphere. The air shimmered faintly where kinetic shielding had flickered into existence only hours before. Now silence claimed the sky. The kind of silence born not from peace, but from the aftermath of restraint. Eli stood alone at the edge of the overlook, visor tucked under one arm, armor scorched along one shoulder. His breaths were calm, but heavy, as though his lungs were still catching up to what his instincts had already processed. Behind him, the alien students remained near the archive's threshold, none of them daring to speak first. Silas was the one who finally broke the quiet. Her voice didn't ripple inside their heads, as usual. She spoke aloud, small, brittle. You didn't fire the first shot. No, Eli replied without turning. We never wanted to. But you could have, she said. He nodded. We always could. Jeantal sat on a rock formation, trembling digits slowly retracting back into his exosuit. His usually calculated speech now came haltingly. Our simulations, all of them predicted either early eradication or complete collapse under pressure. You showed neither. Because your models were built on the wrong assumption, Eli said, stepping away from the ledge. You assumed Earth fights to win. We don't. We fight to survive. Karan stood with his arms crossed, but his posture had shifted. No longer confrontational, just quiet, uncertain. You didn't even kill them. You let them leave. There's no pride in annihilation, Eli said, only in choosing not to become what tried to destroy you. Velox approached from behind the group, his usual rigid composure cracked by what he had witnessed. That was not a defense, he said slowly. That was a revelation. Eli met his eyes. Now you understand. The instructor gestured toward the skyline of New Athens, where the city had already resumed movement. They're rebuilding already. Not even a pause. They never stopped, Eli said. Every system on Earth is layered with contingencies. Every citizen has a protocol. Children train before they learn to calculate. We live with our past breathing down our necks. We don't get to forget. Drevik stepped forward, his silvery skin reflecting the sky. You've endured extinction-level wars, famine, collapse, and you keep rebuilding. Why? Eli looked at him, not with pride, but with something deeper, conviction. Because we're not allowed to quit. This planet raised us in chaos. And every time we were on the brink, we learned. We lost billions, but we adapted. And adaptation, it's the real weapon. There was a moment of stunned stillness among the visitors. For once, none of them looked at Earth as a curiosity or a warning. They looked at it like something they could not yet fully comprehend, an anomaly not of power but of principle. Back on the ship, Silas said, voice trembling, I said your species was a mistake. You weren't wrong, Eli said. We were, for a long time. He stepped toward her, and now she saw the fire in his expression, control but unrelenting. But we're a mistake that learned how not to repeat itself. Quran exhaled sharply. No species should have survived what you've endured. Eli smiled faintly. Exactly. Suddenly, a low chime echoed from the comm system. Oberon's voice resonated gently through the air. Global defensive systems returning to passive monitoring. No further incursions detected. All civilian zones remain secured. This concludes the emergency sequence. The tension snapped like a cord stretched too long. Some students sat down. Others simply closed their eyes. Silas looked toward the sky. I thought we were the apex. I thought the core worlds had perfected civilization. You perfected convenience, Eli replied, not resilience. The words struck deeper than he intended. But they weren't cruel, just honest. Gentle's fingers tapped nervously against his wristband. Why do you allow mockery? Why tolerate being laughed at when you're capable of all this? Eli looked at him, and there was no malice in his answer. Because letting people laugh is easier than making them fear us. And fear, it always comes at a cost. Velok stepped closer, his eyes searching Eli's face. I see now why Earth was denied full military representation in the Galactic Council. Because they're afraid of what we are, Eli said, voice even. Afraid will remind them of what they used to be. They mocked you, Eli, Drevik said, voice low. All of us did. And now you understand why I didn't fight back then, Eli replied. Because I didn't need to. Earth speaks for itself. The sun began to dip below the horizon, washing the cliffs in fire-gold light. The scars of the brief conflict, smoke-torn ground, splintered stone, were already being scrubbed clean by drones. The planet was healing itself. Again, Quran approached Eli slowly. His massive hand extended. For a heartbeat, it hung in the air. Then Eli took it. Quran's grip was firm, and this time not out of dominance but respect. No more jokes, the Braxton said. Don't worry, Eli replied. We've heard them all. Silas smiled weakly. Her psychic presence flickered once more across the group. Asterisk, I'd like to see more of your world. Not its wars. Its heart. Asterisk, Eli nodded. Then you'll finally understand what makes us dangerous. It was never the weapons. It's the will. Above them, the sky was beginning to darken. Not from ships, not from clouds, but from stars. Real ones. Visible and countless. Velox looked upward. Will you return to the academy? Eli followed his gaze. Maybe, but not as a curiosity. Next time, I come as an equal. A pause. Then Velox said something no one expected. You already are. The group stood in the silence of dusk, not as rivals, not as adversaries, but as witnesses to something greater than themselves. Earth had not asked for validation. It had not demanded reverence. It had simply endured, and in doing so, it had proven a truth undeniable to anyone who had the courage to look. That survival is not weakness. That compassion can be sharper than conquest. That resilience, in the hands of those who've suffered most, becomes the sharpest blade of all. And that mockery was always the echo of fear. Eli turned his eyes to the stars. He wasn't afraid of them anymore. Let them come. Earth would still be here.